are you doing?
Good morning. I'm fine.
If you'll go ahead and introduce yourself to the jury.
Hi, I'm Kim Spence.
And you're also very soft-spoken. If you could hold the microphone up to you just a little bit, that would be
I'll do my best. Is that better?
Dr. Spence, I'm going to hand you what has already been offered into evidence as defendant's exhibit number 92. If you'll just take a gander at that for a moment. And what do you recognize defendant's exhibit number 92 to be?
That's my curriculum vitae.
And what is a curriculum vitae?
A curriculum vitae includes the job that you do, the jobs you've previously done. It includes your schooling. It includes any committees that you're on. It includes your experience. And in my case, I do a lot of training, so it lists all the trainings that I provide on a regular basis.
And Dr. Spence, what do you do for a living?
So currently, I'm the clinical director of autism support services for specialized treatment and assessment resources, which is a private forensic practice. I've been in that capacity for about 8 years. Prior to that, I worked for the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities at the University of Central Florida. And I do still work for them part-time, but in the 20 years that I worked for this center full-time, I worked with people with autism from birth to death. I worked directly with families. I provided training. I trained law enforcement on how to recognize autism. And prior to that, I was a teacher.
Tell the jury about your educational background.
My undergraduate degree is in secondary English language arts, so I was an English teacher. I then went back to school and I earned a master's degree in special education in Florida. It's called Varying Exceptionalities. And then I went back to pursue my PhD, which is in personnel prep with a specialized focus on autism and preparing educators, psychologists, or professionals on how to transition students out of school at any level into the community.
You had mentioned a specialized treatment assessment resources. What do you do for, is that also known as STAR?
STAR.
What do you do for STAR?
So I, with my partner who testified earlier, we conduct assessments. We do those sometimes together. I also do work on my own, which would be consulting for a variety of people, which could be public defenders, could be prosecutors, could be the court. I do a lot of education for the court. And I do a lot of training across the United States addressing autism, what it is. I do a lot of work with federal probation and parole, how to support individuals who come into contact with law enforcement, and to support those who may be rendering them supports and or monitoring them in the community.
Dr. Spence, you also mentioned the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities. What is that?
In the state of Florida, the Centers for Autism and Related Disabilities are technical assistance centers. They are state funded. There are 9 centers across the state, and they work primarily in concert with communities in wide areas, depending on where you are. And they provide training. They work directly with families. Again, people who, from birth to death, who have autism. They do a lot of training. Primarily, that's what I do in my part-time capacity. I train law enforcement. And they also do public-based work, so this would be community-based events, so to bring people together in communities who have autism, or if there's awareness that may be needed or necessary to support an individual.
Now, Dr. Spence, do you hold any faculty positions anywhere?
I'm currently, I've been an adjunct instructor at the University of Central Florida for about 20 years. I've taught in both the College of Education and in the Communication and Sciences, which is essentially the college that supports speech and language pathologists and occupational therapists.
Have you been published?
Yes, I have.
And typically when you write articles and book chapters and whatnot, what is your area of focus?
Most of my publications have to do with transitioning individuals, so helping individuals transition from high school into adult life who have autism, so supporting the family, the individual, and seeking community-based resources, and the best way to do that.
Have you ever been on the editorial review board of any publication?
Yes, I spent 17 years as on the review board for the Journal of Vocational Rehabilitation, which is a peer-reviewed journal in the field of special education and working with individuals who have disabilities who are seeking employment. And for the last 10 years, I've been on the consultative editorial board for the Journal of Intellectual Disabilities, which is both our peer-reviewed journals in the field, supporting primarily individuals with developmental disabilities.
And Dr. Spence, are all of your publications listed in your CD that has been offered as Defendant's Exhibit 91?
Yes, they are.
Throughout your career, how long would you say that you have been working with people diagnosed with autism spectrum disorders?
Since 1993. I started my career teaching in a psychiatric facility, and I went on from there to become a public school teacher. I taught both regular ed and special ed, and in 1999 I went to work for the Center for Autism and Related Disabilities.
Have you ever testified in court before?
Yes, I have.
In both state and federal?
Yes.
For both the defense and prosecution?
Yes.
About how many times do you testify for each side? What's the ratio there?
I don't keep track. I'd say probably 60% defense and 40% prosecution.
And Dr. Spence, are you being paid for your work in this case?
Yes.
What were you asked to do for the defense in this case?
In this case, we were asked to, I was asked specifically to review educational records, social security records, and historical records for Mr. Horner, and my partner and I were asked to render an autism spectrum disorders evaluation.
Give the jury just a brief overview of your methodology when conducting an evaluation such as this.
So, as my partner testified, in general, we receive records. We receive records for a variety of reasons. We want to see if the person has any other diagnoses, if they have other mental health conditions that may affect how we're looking at them or what we're using to test them. We also do collateral witness interviews, so that's with family members, that's with educational staff. So the records, those, and then individual testing, that's considered appropriate and or best practice for that client based on what we're looking for.
Dr. Spence, were you in the courtroom when Dr. Imhoff testified?
Yes, I was.
Did you hear him talk about all of the records that y'all had received and reviewed?
Yes, I did.
Did you receive and review the same records?
I did.
Were you present during the testing that Dr. Imhoff conducted?
Yes, I was.
Were you an active participant in the testing, or were you just an observer?
I was an active participant in the testing.
Have you reviewed the results of the testing that you and Dr. Imhoff have, that y'all administered?
Yes.
Do you believe that, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, that Tanner Horner meets the criteria for autism spectrum disorder?
Yes.
I want to talk to you a little bit about autism, okay? Are there different levels of autism?
Yes.
And what are those levels?
So currently, according to the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Health Disorders, so the DSM-5, which I'm sure you've heard quite a bit about during these proceedings, there's, under autism spectrum disorders, there's discernment for level 1, level 2, and level 3. And so essentially what this is differentiating are the types of supports that the individual needs. So as the diagnostician, you're looking at criteria. Do they meet the criteria of being autistic or having autism? Dr. Imhoff talked about rising to the clinical level on the test based on observation, based on historical data. The level 1, level 2, and level 3 is a reference to how many supports that individual needs to communicate with others, to socialize with others, Some clients have very significant, what are referred to as restricted and repetitive patterns of behaviors, meaning they get overly focused on something. So how much support did they need to maybe move away from that or to not be perseverative about it? And so when you're doing the evaluation, we make a discrimination. Is this person only needing communicative support, or are they only needing a little social and communicative support? So that would be a level 1, or are we looking at somebody, level 3 would be probably nonverbal, needing significant supports to function in the community, either traversing the community or getting assistance.
Is level 1 autism still autism?
Yes, absolutely.
And when you have these people who are on level 1, do they still have deficits?
Yeah, absolutely. So by definition, you have autism with each of these levels. So meeting the criteria means you definitively, there are certain things you have to have. So under criterion A, problems with reciprocity, problems not understanding nonverbal social cues, difficulty with relationships and friendships. And then under criterion B, there's a variety of things. So you have all those things. But the way that it looks in somebody who has level 1 and the way that it looks in somebody that has level 3, it looks different. And so I think about this like looking at Swiss cheese, let's say, okay? I have 2 blocks of Swiss cheese, but the holes are different, okay? They're the same, but the holes are different. So the way they're going to experience things, the levels of help that they need is going to be different.
Dr. Spence, one of our other witnesses had said that there's a saying in autism circles that if you've met an autistic person, you've met an autistic person.
So that's a quote that's attributed to Dr. Stephen Shore, who is a person with autism, and yes, it's very true in that I've worked with thousands of people that have autism, but they each have a unique presentation.
So do all people with autism, do they all share common characteristics?
Yes, by virtue of having the diagnosis, again, we would expect to see difficulty with reciprocity, problems with not understanding, not picking up on nonverbal social cues, difficulty on the whole in relationships, and then we see rigidity, need for sameness, structure, wanting to be scheduled, and then, as I mentioned, sometimes overfixation or repetitive behavior that's surrounding an object or an item.
During your evaluation of Tanner, did you observe any of those symptoms that you just related, the rigidity, the need for structure, things of that nature?
Yes.
What did you observe?
I remember during the first day, Mr. Horner, based on the records, likes structure, likes to know what's going to happen, and likes a routine. And so during the evaluation, he became very focused on when his medication was going to come, and to the point where I finally got up and went and asked one of the guards because it didn't come at a certain time, and he reported to us it really bothered him when the meds did not come at a certain time. Though he knew they were coming, again, this would be kind of a common symptom that we see.
I want to get back to some of the common issues or some of the symptoms that we deal with in persons with autism. You had talked about getting services and about transitioning from high school to adulthood. How important is it to assist a student with autism transitioning to adulthood?
It's critically important.
Why is that?
If an individual who's exiting school, finishing high school, is not properly prepared, they often end up not working. They often end up not going on for additional education if they've not been adequately prepared to transition out of high school. And if, depending on the kinds of, most of my clients and many people that have autism have co-occurring conditions. The 2 most common are depression and anxiety. So those also need to be supported. So depending on the way the client's presenting, we need to think about how able they are to live on their own, how able they are to secure medications, how able they are to secure employment. And there needs to be a good solid plan for that, supports for that. And for many of my clients, they need support well into adulthood to be successful.
You mentioned co-occurring and comorbidities. Anxiety and depression, how does that affect how does all that work together? The autism, the anxiety, the depression?
Can you be more specific in your question?
I'll try to ask a better one. You had talked about comorbidities. I mean, what is that? And why is it important to understand?
So comorbidity means, so if you have a person and they have a diagnosis of autism, comorbidity means the depression is another standalone diagnosis, meaning that their symptoms rise to a clinical level of recognition. Same with anxiety. So independent of the autism, they also have these conditions. I think that's what you're
that's what I'm trying to ask. Dr. Spence, is there a cure for autism?
No.
Is it a lifelong diagnosis?
Yes, it is.
What can we do to help transition students with autism into adulthood?
Well, there's a lot we can do. I mean, we look individually at the needs of the individuals, but for individuals who have complex behavioral histories, we look at applied behavioral analysis. For individuals who are having difficulty with depression, we want to make sure they're being adequately treated, if that be medication, if that be therapeutic intervention. So really individually looking at the client and what they need is critically important. And again, when we have an individual that has multiple things happening, most of my clients have multiple co-occurring conditions, ADHD, some have OCD. All of those need to be thought about in terms of what kinds of supports you need and how also to kind of maintain those. So once you move away from parental or caregiver managing that you're able to actually manage that. And that's very important.
Dr. Spence, based upon the records that you reviewed, were you able to determine whether or not Tanner received services during school?
Yes, he did.
And were these the type of things let me back up. Were the services that he received in school the type of services that, might help him cope while in school?
Yes.
Are those the type of services that might help him, I guess, for lack of better words, navigate life as an adult?
I think some of the things that were being worked on, particularly with the in-home trainer, would be things that, had they continued to be provided, would have been helpful during the transition period into adulthood.
Was there any indication that services were provided in any form or fashion after he graduated from high school?
Not that I saw.
So what happens if the training that he learned in high school isn't reinforced by the additional services after school?
For most people, it's quite unlikely that it will carry over, or what we call generalize. So people with autism have a difficult time generalizing. So if I teach you a certain skill in a certain environment, they often have difficulty taking that skill and then applying it to a new environment. So if there had not been some either method, instruction, or targeted intervention that was going to continue to teach those skills that would be needed, it'd be very unlikely for somebody to maintain those on their own.
Dr. Spence, I want to shift your attention to the Social Security records that have been offered into evidence in this case. In order to receive a disability benefit, must you have a diagnosis?
For Social Security, yes, a qualifying diagnosis.
If you have a diagnosis, does that automatically mean that you are disabled?
By the measure of Social Security?
Yes.
So you have to have a qualifying diagnosis, and you, according to the agency, then there would be certain demarcations of behavioral output or symptoms you're experiencing, and determinations are made based on the either presence of significant symptoms or the lack thereof.
Did you review the Social Security records that were provided in this case?
Yes, I do.
And based upon your review of the records, were you able to determine if Tanner was receiving benefits as a juvenile?
Yes, I believe he began receiving SSI income at the age of 10. He was identified as a disabled child at 10.
And based upon your experience with helping other autistic juveniles obtain benefits, does the Social Security office, do they just hand it out, or do they need some sort of documentation?
Oh, they absolutely need documentation.
I want to jump forward to when Tanner was 18, and he went in for a disability determination decision. What does that mean? What is that?
Sure. So the Social Security Administration essentially has kind of two operating bodies. So you've got 18 and prior to 18, and then you've got 18 and older. So for children who are identified and diagnosed, it's, I don't want to say simple, but it's quite easy to get services, especially if there's a behavioral component or difficulty in multiple settings, which was certainly the case for Mr. Horner. Once a person turns 18, the criteria by which the Social Security Administration uses to measure how disabled you are changes. Okay? So as you get older, there's going to be decisions about how able you might be able to work. How able are you going to be able to live on your own? How able are you going to be able to function? So there's kind of two different ways that is looked at. And in that determination, usually you meet with an individual meets with an evaluator who does an interview, may do some testing, and then they will pass along their recommendations to the Social Security Administration, who then determines whether or not the individual meets the criteria to continue to receive Social Security income benefits.
Now, you said that the determination for a juvenile was a little more lax than as an adult. Even as a child, will you be required, or will that child be required to have a disabling diagnosis?
Yes.
Now, based upon your review of the records that were offered by the state, were Tanner's benefits terminated when he turned 18?
Yes.
And was that because he no longer met the criteria?
He no longer met the criteria according to the Social Security Administration's criteria.
So does that mean that Tanner no longer had autism?
No.
Did you review the evaluation that was done in that case?
Yes. By Dr. Williams?
Yes.
Yes.
Do you think that was a good assessment for determining disability?
No, I do not.
Why not?
You had an 18-year-old male who was driven to the interview by his grandmother. You had a young man who had a reported history, had been receiving for 7 years benefits based on that disabling condition, who reported that both of his parents were incarcerated. The interviewer described him as disheveled and not a good historian. And so really, in my opinion, what should have happened, and what in most cases would happen, would be you would then ask a collateral witness, you would ask a caregiver, and then they could have been afforded records from special education, which were readily available, his mental health records, which were readily available, or the recording of his paternal grandmother, who was taking care of him because neither of his parents were available to take care of him, how able he was to do things.
Dr. Spence, I want to move on to the records that you reviewed related to the offense in this case. Did you review the video of this incident?
Yes.
And did you talk to Tanner about the facts of the case?
No.
Why not?
We were asked to do an autism evaluation.
And do the facts of the case affect your opinion on whether he does or does not have autism?
No.
So was it relevant to what you were asked to do?
Reviewing all the materials?
Reviewing specifically the facts of the incident.
They're not necessary, but obviously if we're making sure that we're only looking at autism and there's nothing else for that reason.
Now, Tanner has multiple pervasive conditions. Now, we're talking about autism, depression, anxiety, lead exposure, FASD.
So y'all object as a leading.
Go ahead, ask your question.
Communications disorders, and structural brain abnormalities. So even though you didn't review the evidence related to the offense, and even though you didn't talk to Tanner about the facts of the case, can you opine on whether any of these conditions caused him to commit the offense on November the 30th of 2022?
No,
Is that what you're here to do?
no,
You're not here to say that autism caused him to do this?
absolutely not.
You're not here to say that fetal alcohol syndrome disorder caused him to do this?
No,
But my question is, is it possible that these conditions influenced his behavior on that day or the days leading up to that event?
certainly.
And can these conditions influence his behavior after the event, after his arrest?
Yes,
And can these conditions influence his behavior going forward once he goes to prison?
yes.
And lastly, Dr. Spence, I want to talk to you about Tanner. Now, based upon your 30-plus years in working with people with autism, do most of them know that they're just a little different?
In my experience, yes, they do.
And based upon your interactions with Tanner, did he know that he was a little different?
Yes, he reported that to us.
Now, even though Tanner has had these conditions that we just talked about, has he been able to behave himself in jail?
That's been reported to us, yes.
You talked earlier about that people on the autism spectrum like structure and routine. Did you find that to be the case with Tanner?
Oh, definitely.
Why do you say that?
He reported the things that he does during the day, which is actually one of the questions that's asked during the ADOS, that he likes knowing what comes next, he likes knowing what the routine is, he likes knowing what to expect, he likes maintaining a schedule as much as he can.
Change happens. Did you agree with that?
Of course.
And change happens that is not within the control of, not within our own personal control. Can we control what other people do?
No.
Can we control what other organizations do?
No.
So it's been suggested that any change in routine will always result in a meltdown, which could devolve into violence. Has this been your experience in dealing with autistic clients for over the past 30 years?
No.
And based upon your evaluation and your interviews and your observations, how well has Tanner adjusted to life in jail?
By all accounts, he seems to be doing well.
Do you have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Ma'am, you just answered a question about autistic people in general resulting in violence. Is that what your testimony is? They don't generally do that, do they, autistic people?
I'm sorry,
They don't generally have a meltdown and resort to violence, do they?
the proportionate rate would be a low percentage, yes.
Right. And you were asked that question, I think is more of a question of, do they have a propensity for violence? You would agree that autistic people do not have a propensity for violence?
Some.
Right. But you know in this case, that this particular case, this particular person you're saying is autistic, did indeed resort to high order violence, correct?
Yes,
And sexual assault.
yes.
And you listened to the audio.
I saw audio, I believe there's 4 or 5 tapes, so I saw just after she was abducted and the camera was covered, but I have read the entire transcript of the full audio.
Some of the questions, I'm not going to repeat questions that I asked Dr. Imhoff as far as truthfulness and trustworthiness, but you'll agree with me that you realized coming into this that Mr. Horner had not been truthful about many aspects of what happened in this case.
Yes.
Did you inquire about that or challenge him on those at any point?
We didn't ask him anything about the case.
You didn't ask him about his truthfulness or anything else in the case?
No.
But you were relying, at least at some portion, on what he was telling you to fill out this, make up this report, were you not?
Yes.
But you didn't really know what he was telling you then was true or false.
Well, we had additional information from collateral witnesses, from family members, and existing data to rely upon, which corroborated his answers to us.
So let me just ask you this. Do you have your notes in front of you? And man, your notes weren't titled, so I'm going to try to direct you to where I want to go. Okay.
Yeah, you may have to show them. You may have to show them to me. I don't know if I brought my notes.
Okay.
I had
I've
them.
got
There would have been 2 files, so mine were day 1, day 2.
I've got a little highlight on mine. Is that going to be okay?
That's fine.
Judge, if I may? Absolutely. That appears to be your notes,
Yes.
absent my highlighting and Chicken Strand.
Yeah, absent your additions.
Okay, thank you. So in the report here, in your notes, this would be what Mr. Horner is telling you, correct?
I'm capturing as much information as I can, yes.
So in your report, we just heard from Dr. Imhoff, and I'm just trying to clarify accuracy here. Mr. Horner reported cocaine 1 to 2 times per
Your Honor,
month.
if counsel could direct me to where he is referring.
Yeah, it's on page, there's not page numbers, here, I'll show you the page.
Do you have a timestamp? There are timestamps on there. Which day is that?
Not really dated or.
This one I think is from the 16th. Oh,
Okay.
no, that's the report one. This would be from the 16th.
The 16th
Yes,
of
October.
October.
Because this is notes from the 8th, so yes.
So back to my question here, when you're talking on page 9 of your report here, you just for an example, you talk about him using cocaine you're asking that, right? It says 1 to 2 times per month. But your notes here say he started using it daily. Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then this report says that he denied using crack cocaine, but you say yes, he was using crack cocaine. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And then with regard to hallucinogens, you say it's sporadically, correct? Or the report?
Yeah.
But yet, is that right? Sorry, on page 9? Is that right?
Yes. That's
Sporadically?
correct.
But yet your notes reflect lots of ecstasy and lots of acid. Is that right?
That's correct.
So those don't match, do they?
They do not.
So is your report correct or are your notes correct?
Well, those are my notes, and the report is a collaboration between Dr. Imhoff and myself. So often he will write sections of the report, and I will write sections of the report. So that appears maybe to be more reflective of the data that he collected during the interview.
You said y'all were sitting there together when all this was going on.
Yes.
So it would seem like y'all would collect the same data, wouldn't it?
Try very hard, yes.
Right. So, but this is all information that Mr. Horner is reporting to you,
Yes.
that you believe is accurate, is what you're telling us.
To the best of my ability, yes.
Okay. You talked a little about services and things, about people, and I'm going to kind of put this all together with the Social Security stuff here. You said the services provided allow them to transition from high school into adult life, and I think you said to be able to do things. Is that the word you used?
Are you referring to the Social Security records?
Well, I'm trying to get, you said that the services allow them, and I wasn't really clear what it allowed them to do transitioning from high school into adulthood.
Well, Social Security is, in specific to this, is Social Security income. So it's money that is provided to, for children to a designee. And once somebody is 18, if they continue to meet the requirement, then the money would be provided to them.
Let me stop you. I did not ask a very good question. Let me get back here to this. You said that they need support. These people that have been diagnosed with level 1 autism need support that transition from high school into adulthood.
Most people with autism need assistance in transitioning. Yes.
All right. To allow them to do things in life.
Yes.
For example, things like have friends in a social life. That'd be
Yes.
something they need to have.
Sometimes, yes.
Maybe girlfriends or relationships.
Often.
What about work, being able to work and be able to earn income,
For many, yes, they need assistance.
and things like that. But what you're talking about there are all things that, according to your report, that Tanner Horner does already have and has reported to you that that is how his life is it not?
Well, for Mr. Horner, he had a very inconsistent ability to work. He had many jobs. I believe we have a list included in the report. He had great difficulty maintaining employment.
Okay. Well, let me ask you about this. Your report reflects that he had multiple friends that he commented about you in his report.
Yes.
And he commented to you about an extensive social life, did he not?
I wouldn't use the word extensive.
Well, I mean, how many, let me just ask you, how many sexual partners did he say that he had?
I'd have to go back and look at the...
If I represented to you that he said it was 30, would that sound about right? So it would sound like he has a pretty active social life.
Depends on how you define social life.
Okay, I agree with that. But he had girlfriends at the time, according to him?
He did have girlfriends, yes.
And then also in addition to that, he admitted to you that he had, I guess, from your notes, I would say pretty extensive drug use and partying. Is that right?
I believe that is true, yes.
And on top of that, you know as well in here that you said he got additional services and had them available to treat whatever mental health conditions were existing at that time, correct?
At which time?
Throughout his life. You reviewed the MHMR records and other things, did you not?
So he had sporadic services throughout his life.
Right. Now, I want to talk about work. You said he had a lot of different jobs.
Yes.
And I'm going to guess you're attributing his many different jobs to his autism. Is that what you're saying?
I think he had problems with employment that related to a variety of things.
Okay. But what you're talking about here, and we've heard evidence of this, he was fired from different jobs and just walked out of different jobs, correct?
That's correct.
And that he was able to maintain employment for upwards of a year at least 2 different jobs, correct?
That sounds about right.
And that, including at the job that he was having currently at right now, when this crime occurred, November 30th, he was actively operating a FedEx truck, wasn't he?
Yes,
And that would require somebody to utilize a map or GPS, wouldn't it?
yes,
Would require somebody to communicate with people in the public.
yes,
And I would say effectively communicate things of package delivery and whatever he's doing as part of his job, right?
it's pretty narrow, but yes.
Okay. But he'd be able to operate a motor vehicle.
Yes, a lot of people with autism drive.
Okay. I'm just going through that. So he was actively working and making money at the time of this offense, wasn't he?
Yes, that's correct.
So when you talk about that he needs support to living life, what you've told me here is it sounds like he's living the life just like everyone else who's living the life. Friends, social life, girlfriends, work, partying and drug use. Those all sound like things that everybody else does. Would you agree?
Yes,
Excuse me. Pardon me, Judge. The last thing I'm going to talk to you about is you made several comments about his ability to be in jail and not have any issues in jail. Right? That's what you said?
yes, I answered questions for him.
But it's true that he's been in segregated custody the entire time, isn't that right?
That's my understanding.
So he didn't have access to other people to do things to.
He has been in segregation, yes, you were correct.
Pastor,
Read the record.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Spence, the state has spent a few minutes talking to you about the strengths that Tanner may possess. Being able to drive a car, follow a GPS, things like that. When we are dealing with people with neurodevelopmental disorders, as a clinician, as a psychologist, as a forensic person, do we focus on their strengths or do we focus on their deficits?
Their deficits,
Why is that important?
because that's what we target for treatment.
So the fact that he can drive a car, does that mean he's not autistic?
No,
The fact that he was able to say hello and deliver a package, does that mean he's no longer on the spectrum? The fact that he was able to have a girlfriend, does that mean that he is not level 1?
no.
When you look at the deficits, what are the deficits that presented for Tanner?
For Mr. Murr specifically, he had a lot of difficulty with reciprocity. So reciprocity is something that if you are neurotypical, you're able to do without thinking. So when I arrived today and I began interacting with guards outside. I said, hey, how you doing? They responded back. We had a brief conversation, and then I knew the conversation was done. They knew it was done. And so people that have autism often will continue to talk to people. They'll talk over the top of people. They're unable to read the nonverbal social cues that the conversation is over or that it might be inappropriate to have it at all. So he has a lot of problems in engaging in appropriate reciprocity. He has substantial difficulty with nonverbal social cues, so things that we would look to in facial expression, in tone of voice, in an inference where we're trying to explain something, he really struggles with those. And while, as was pointed out, he did have friends, the healthiness of those friendships, the reasons for some of those friendships, I would certainly question. That he had I would say those are the things that impacted him the most. in interviewing, in records, and in the historical data.
And Dr. Spence, the state pointed out in your notes that, and did you have a copy of your notes?
I don't believe I have a copy of them.
May I approach them?
Yes, ma'am.
I believe this was the case that the prosecutor had mentioned, where you had noted at the bottom that there was lots of acid. Is acid a hallucinogen?
Yes.
I want to look at the rest of your notes. With regards to hallucinogens, well, let me back up. With regards to the acid, was there any documentation in your notes related to the time frame during which he was taking acid?
No.
Is there documentation in your notes with regards to the time frame during which he was taking hallucinogens?
Yes, in my notes it says hallucinogens, started using them in 2011 or 2012, sometimes once per week, and sometimes he go long periods without using substances, then once per week.
So is that really an inconsistency? Inconsistency, yes.
No.
The last thing that the state talked to you about was to Dr. Imhoff.
Yes.
Did he have access to the other experts who evaluated him?
Yes.
Did he have access to the guards on transport?
Yes.
Did he have access to the people who brought him his lunch?
Yes.
Did he have access to the people who brought him his medications?
Yes.
Did he have access to other people in the hall when you were with him waiting for transport?
I don't recollect.
But he had access to other people other than inmates.
Yes. Yeah.
Did he attack any of those people?
Not to my knowledge.
I'll pass the witness.
Mr. Stanton,
No further on.
may Dr. Spence be excused?
No objection.
Thank you, ma'am, and thank you very much. Okay, we're gonna break for lunch. It's on its way. It'll be here shortly, okay? So, see you in a little bit.
Still not.